Because my attitude is a Kenny Pickett, a Dylan Gabriel, a Tyler Huntley, that should not be enough to derail Shedeur Sanders. To me, you're legitimately competing for the QB2. But I do view him as somebody who could position himself to be that QB2. And if he's not in that position, but he's playing well, we know that the reason that would be the case is because they don't want people clamoring for Shedeur Sanders prematurely.
Yeah, I agree. It's a stair-step process. The first step that he took was in the preseason game as far as bunching his name in the bunch with the guys that are playing.
Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back, going straight after Coach Stefanski for what he believes is a manufactured controversy. According to Stephen A., Stefanski intentionally pushed the "Shedeur is injured" storyline to create the impression that the young quarterback isn't truly the team's QB2. He accused Stefanski of actively working to hold Shedeur back, and this sudden oblique injury talk is nothing more than a smokescreen. Stephen A. went even further, suggesting this entire situation could have been orchestrated higher up the chain, with team ownership pulling the strings and Stefanski simply following orders.
Amount of work that we've seen. And that comes with going up against competition. Of course, second and third units and all of that stuff come into play. But when you're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, had he shown up this weekend and balled out again, playing 45 or more snaps like he did in the first game and putting up similar, if not better numbers, I think that would have boded very, very well for him.
Stephen A. emphasized that it was plain to see. Had Shedeur Sanders replicated his previous strong performance, Stefanski and the team's owners would have been left with no choice but to put him on the field. According to Stephen A., Shedeur's talent and momentum were undeniable, and his rise to QB2 status was inevitable. However, he argued that this sudden injury was no coincidence. Instead, he claimed it was a perfectly timed obstacle, deliberately put in place to derail Shedeur's progress. In his view, the entire situation was orchestrated by the ownership, with Stefanski merely carrying out their agenda. And Stephen A. might have a point, because at this stage, it's no longer just about Shedeur's alleged injury. It's about the bigger picture and the timing of it all. Only days after the game, Kevin Stefanski faced the media and downplayed the idea that Shedeur was in serious contention for the starting role. He insisted his focus was on developing all the quarterbacks on the roster equally. On the surface, that explanation sounded fair and balanced until the official depth chart was released. That's when everything shifted, revealing a twist that left many questioning the real motives behind the decision.
We know how the game goes. But then he starts talking about the offense, right? 0 giveaways. Okay, this is when you're supposed to insert Shedeur, some fans think. Let's talk.
Okay, special teams, Buki, takeaway.
Even after Sanders delivered what many consider the top quarterback performance of the entire preseason, Stefanski still placed him in the 4th spot on the depth chart. Here's where it gets even stranger. Both Dillon and Pickett were dealing with injuries at the time, yet Sanders was somehow ranked behind them. The decision not only raised eyebrows, but also defied common sense, further intensifying the rumors and suspicions about the real agenda playing out behind the scenes in Cleveland. Reacting to the depth chart, Shedeur didn't hold back on criticizing the Browns, pointing out that being a 5th-round pick shouldn't automatically dictate his place on the roster, especially after his preseason performance. Stephen A. echoed that sentiment, making it clear that ranking Shedeur 4th had nothing to do with reality. In his view, the decision wasn't based on merit or on-field results at all. Instead, he argued, the depth chart placement was predetermined, handed to him not because he earned it, but because that's where the organization wanted him from the start.
What your position is on the depth chart at the start of the season, as opposed to the start of training camp and ultimately preseason. Because what happens is that they had him in that position before he competed, before he had a chance to prove himself. It's not like they walked in there and they said, okay, y'all competed, and as a result of what we've seen, we've got you as the QB4. No, you came in there and that's where they placed you.
Just when it seemed the situation couldn't get any messier, new reports emerged claiming that Stefanski has no intention of playing Shedeur Sanders in the second preseason game. That revelation only intensified the controversy. Despite his standout showing, it's becoming increasingly clear that Sanders may not be part of the Browns' immediate plans, at least not in the role supporters and analysts expected. This raises a pressing question. Is this all part of a calculated strategic approach, or is there an underlying, possibly personal motive shaping these decisions? And now, out of nowhere, he's supposedly injured. It's hard not to suspect there's more at play behind the curtain, because just as the calls to put Shedeur Sanders on the field were reaching a peak, the Browns appeared to be looking for ways to cool that momentum. When no other justification seemed to fit, they labeled it arm soreness, an issue they claimed would be resolved by the very next day. That explanation only deepens the doubts. Is this truly a legitimate injury, or simply a convenient excuse to keep Sanders out of action while the pressure mounts? Even Stefanski acknowledged that Sanders' recovery could take a bit longer than normal, emphasizing the importance of caution since it affects a crucial muscle group. However, the way he phrased his remarks and the subtle hesitation in his voice only fueled the uncertainty. Each word felt deliberately chosen, as though he were carefully avoiding something. His unwillingness to lay everything out plainly is making it harder to believe we're getting the full picture, leaving the impression that there's more to this situation than he's willing to reveal.
If it's a right guard, you can play through that. When it's a quarterback, you kind of need that muscle to throw. So unfortunately, I'm going to put him down for a little bit here. We'll treat it day to day and see how he responds. But I want to be smart because he's a thrower, so you can't push it.
Stephen A. argued that the Browns' moves are a calculated effort to silence the growing chorus of voices calling for Shedeur Sanders. He believes the team witnessed the wave of support and excitement that built around Sanders after his first game, and it made them uneasy. Rather than letting that momentum build, Stephen A. suggested they're actively working to slow it down, keeping him out of sight to prevent his name from dominating conversations. In his view, this isn't about injuries or depth charts. It's about controlling the narrative and making sure Sanders doesn't become a force the team can't ignore.
But I do view him as somebody who could position himself to be that QB2. And if he's not in that position, but he's playing well, we know that the reason that would be the case is because they don't want people clamoring for Shedeur Sanders prematurely.
The situation surrounding Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns has evolved into far more than a simple depth chart debate or an injury update. It's now a full-blown controversy with layers of speculation, suspicion, and frustration. From Stephen A. Smith's fiery accusations against Coach Stefanski to the oddly timed arm soreness announcement, every development seems to raise more questions than it answers. Sanders' preseason performance was strong enough to make a compelling case for a bigger role. Yet the Browns' decisions, from ranking him fourth despite injuries to other quarterbacks, to reportedly sitting him out of the second preseason game, send a completely different message. Stephen A. has been clear in his belief that this isn't about Sanders' abilities at all, but rather a deliberate effort to keep his momentum from building. The timing, the language used in press conferences, and the reluctance to provide clear answers all suggest a controlled narrative. When fans saw Sanders shine in his first game, they rallied behind him, and according to Stephen A., that's exactly what the organization wants to avoid. Instead of capitalizing on that excitement, the Browns appear to be pumping the brakes, possibly to protect pre-existing plans or to avoid internal conflict over roster decisions. The Browns' insistence on caution and the vague updates about Sanders' condition have only fueled speculation about whether this is strategic misdirection or simply poor management. If it's strategy, it's a risky one, because alienating both the fan base and the player could have lasting consequences. If it's personal, then the organization risks undermining its own credibility. Either way, one thing is certain: This story isn't going away anytime soon. Until the Browns are transparent and let Sanders truly compete based on merit, the whispers of hidden agendas will only grow louder. What do you think is really going on here? Is this truly about protecting Shedeur Sanders' health, or is the injury narrative just a convenient way to keep him off the field? Do you believe Coach Stefanski is simply following orders from the front office? Or is he personally invested in keeping Sanders from moving up the depth chart? Could this be part of a bigger strategic plan? Or are we witnessing politics and personal agendas take priority over performance? Most importantly, if Sanders continues to be sidelined despite proving himself, how long will fans stay quiet about it?